All right, there we go.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Excellent. All right, let's start. My name is Vladimir. I live in Brisbane. I do contribute to Drupal, not as often as I want. I'm also organizing meetups and conferences, as usually in Brisbane. So today, the topic is been a passion of mine for the last year or so, contributing back to Drupal documentation. It's been actually a passion for longer than that because sometimes you get to certain documentation on any project, and you get quite frustrated. Either there is not enough information, there is not enough technical information, there is too much technical information, and so on and so forth. And Drupal is one of those examples where we actually can go to drupal.org, as you can see on my screen. Come on. Okay, so we have all these fancy pages, and we start looking for documentation, and it's actually zero uh, links here, right? So we can go learn about Drupal CMS, but if I want to like quick link to documentation, it's actually not even here. So it's no longer in the menu. Well done, update. I wasn't ready for that. So as you can see, here's the local development guide. So the guides are actually case studies, fintech. So as you can see, especially for the person who is just there, first time, support Drupal Connect. It's quite overwhelming. There's no quick link on going documentation and going straight forward. One of my favorite examples is the Bootstrap. I know it's a framework and comparison is kind of well, but here docs is the first menu in the link and examples is the second. I find that's very good, especially when we're talking about the tool that is actually there for development and building. So I think documentation should be a bit more accessible. If we'll go to an old interface, the one you can see here, this is my user page and I'm logged in. But if we'll look for the documentation here, first of all, on your profile, you actually see how many edits you did to the documentation. And then if we'll start, uh, ooh, I became a maintainer of the guides. That's a new one as well. Well, we'll discover what we can do here as well. I wasn't aware of that. And so apparently there is a project called documentation, and there is also a documentation section on the bottom. That's where I wanted to get. So again, you need to scroll, depending on the page, you need to scroll all the way to the bottom of the page to get to Drupal guide, Drupal user guide, developer documentation, and API Drupal. So today it will be developer-oriented talk because I'm going to talk about specific API, but I'm going to show you the difference between how to contribute to the guide versus how to contribute to developer docs. And I'm doing it ad hoc. It means a lot of things might break or not work, which is good as well because it's an experience for me. But I also wanted to show you a real example that we're actually we during this meetup we're going to contribute. So without further ado, I would recommend you to get these numbers up and just go, even if you don't want to contribute as a content writer, you can always go and edit the documentation. So one day I was sitting in the code and one of the clients' website had the REST resource. And I never used REST resource as a plugin in Drupal. So I decided to have a look. So what is the REST resource and how can you use it? There are a couple of examples. You can see I already did a search on REST resource, new notation for the specific plugin in the documentation, and there's only 5 examples there. We will get to the code a bit later, but I copied the REST resource and I went to the Dr. Google, not a real doctor, but sometimes it helps. And I search REST resolvers Drupal because So far, that's the best results I can get, and you can see I'm getting first two URLs were the guides. So they're sitting under docs API. So this is not an API documentation. API documentation is link 5, and we'll get to that as well. But first, we're going to look at those two guides and see how far they getting us. So the first, custom REST resources under RESTful Web Services API. So it would take you to this page, RESTful Services Overview. Is it the one? No, I think that's the one. Yes. So as you can see, it's developed Drupal API guides, RESTful Web API resources. It's actually have one page, and there is a big warning here saying, hey, the page is not yet reviewed by RESTful Web Services API maintainers. So this particular guide has maintainers, which you might or might not see on the right-hand side. At the moment, I can't see anyone. So if I'll click on the guide and go to the bottom, you can see there is one user. And in most of the cases, if you want any modification done to the guide, adding and removing pages, at the moment there's only 2 pages, this one and the one that we just landed from Google. And you already can see there are issues here. So for example, RESTful Web Services API, it says here RESTful Web Services API in Drupal 8. So this would be our first edit to documentation today. So drum roll, we're doing it live. I click edit. I can see edit because I'm logged in into Drupal.org. I'm going to do a couple of things. So I'm going to remove 8 because we passed that, I hope. Hope everyone passed 8. As you can see, there is description as well. And I can change status to, this is actually a guide status. So there is no needs review. So I'm gonna preview. It says you need to explain your changes. So removed Drupal 8 reference and click save. Oh. So it takes a while. It's gonna go and save it, and hopefully we will see updated page. So what's happening here at the moment is there's lots of outdated guides there. And as you can see, it's removed Drupal 8. So we already edited a single page, right? Then we'll go to actually the goal of my research, which was how to use the RESTful services. And I can see there is already a Drupal 8 reference here. So I can slowly, or if you want, you can do it later. Well, once I finish the talk, now go and start editing it. So I would start reading stuff in, and you can see there is specific version references, like the reference in endpoint 2. It can be rephrased because we don't need to say 8.2 really, or have some historical reference. So I need to go and read through that whole thing. So I was skimming through and saying, customize a REST resource format. So basically this plugin creates a REST resource, REST API that we can actually go and hit on our website. And it actually goes and says, so here's how to do it, here's things to go. It explains URL passes, how to do stuff in there. So we can actually go and start editing. So if any of you wants to go and read it and see if it actually makes sense, it's a good idea just to go and reread it and see if it makes sense. There can be spelling mistakes. If there are no spelling mistakes, sometimes the sentences are outdated, as I say, or might not even be up to date. Come on, go away. Sorry, I cannot click on another tab because of this guy.
Because of the Zoom thing, we can't see this guy.
Yep,
So
yeah, I already got rid of it. So imagine I'm just fighting flies or something. So the second guide was RESTful API resources overview. That's the same one. Custom resources. So, okay. So that's an interesting bit. You can see I couldn't find the page because the guide only contains 2 pages. In fact, it actually contains more. You as a creator can go and add new pages to the guide, but the users won't see them in the menu because it needs a maintainer to go and place this page. And this page was created, you can see last updated on 26th of January. We can see the history there if we want to, but it actually warns you now this page has not been yet reviewed by maintainer and added to the menu. So now it gives you a nice warning. The second one, it says the documentation needs review. So it means someone wrote it, and I usually write it and say needs review. So you can see the whole discussion. You can see the whole discussion there that goes throughout past since 2016. So that's when the page was first created and edited, and up to that. So what here it's a custom REST resources. So how to create a custom endpoint in Drupal using the proper plugin. And again, here, if you'll start skimming through this particular page, you would notice that, for example, things like core are no longer there. It actually requires core version maintainability to create. So they create the demo REST API module, but documentation is already outdated. This is a Drupal 8, Drupal 9 notation right there. So, and I'm sure if you read through more stuff, you'll see the different examples. However, if you look at the REST resource definition, it's actually a modern Drupal 10.3, 10.4, and Drupal 11 notation rather than the one that sits inside the comment. So it's interesting. Some bits of documentation are up to date and updated, and it's great. And here's another REST resource with a modern definition. But some of the bits, like here, this one won't work. In fact, it would actually, I think, give you a warning if you put a core there. So we can update this piece of code by clicking edit on this custom REST resource. Go and open some module. So I'm opening info.yaml, address info.yaml. So these days we actually put a core version requirement there rather than core 8. CK editor inside documentation pages has nice code editing capabilities. So it's actually YAML file, not PHP file. So here I'll just leave 11, place it, and here we go, YAML, change it to YAML, say okay. And we change it to a newer version. Explain your changes. I'll keep it in needs review because it needs more review. But if any of you wants to jump on this page, review it and say needs work, no more problems, or deprecate it, you definitely can do that. So replaced or with conversion requirement. Right, and this is in a nutshell, how you update guides. There's plenty of guides, not only technical one. I picked up this REST resource because I'm at the moment investigating it and I never used it. I thought it would be good. Then if you want, you can try to go to the beginning of this guide and contact the maintainer, saying, hey, there's this page. It's very useful. It's still up to date. I'm still reviewing it, but can you add it to the guide? I found the Slack is the best way to contact the maintainers. And if they're still with Drupal or still on Slack, they usually will reply. Again, depending on maintainer, depending on how busy people are. That's why I would like to see probably 2 or 3 maintainers per guide. And I'm not sure as a guide maintainer because I just realized I've been made maintainer of the guide just recently, although I requested it a couple of years back. I don't know if I'm getting any notification for the particular guide. But what's going to happen from here on is you actually in your user profile. So when you go to your dashboard, every page you update it, you will start getting notification, not via email, but via your posts. So every time the page in a guide that you updated, as you can see here, now every time those two pages were going to be updated, I will get the post. I think you can click on the page and can unsubscribe from it. Can you? Following. So, oh, I'm not sure what's this. I haven't seen that before. Is that can anyone see this icon with a pencil, or is it just me again in the Zoom?
I can't.
It's the zoom. It's the annotate the screen pencil. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Everyone
That
can see it on their own machine, but not on yours, I think.
okay, excellent. Now how do I do that? Got it. Okay, Zoom thing. Can anyone see the red thing? Can I delete it?
We can see the red thing.
Yes.
Oh well, let it be there
Let
just
it
for
be
fun.
there, that's fine.
It's going to be watermark. Anyway, this is the guide to editing the RESTful editing the guides. The problem with Drupal.org at the moment here, once you go and learn about Drupal CMS and actually get to Drupal CMS, you cannot edit the pages. You actually need to create a task to edit the pages. Last time I checked, a couple of months ago, so that's also probably going to be a big barrier. So it would be good to rethink how to do the documentation. I always like documentation to be bundled with the application, but that means people need to go to Git to read it or something like that. Anyway, this is guides. So this is providing help for the guides. Now I'll go back to my account and I go to the core. So I contributed a number of issues to Drupal core. And a couple of them actually are related to documentation. So I want to show you a couple of issues and how to see them. So there is a three. So there's entity access check contains incorrect errors. Once you go to the API, I'll explain the API documentation and then we'll show you this particular thing. So if you want to get a contribution credit on something like a core, it's a good idea to start updating the API documentation. And if we go back to our search, I mentioned before, the class restore API documentation here is api.drupal.org. Let's open it up. And it actually takes us to the API. Another issue with the API portal is that it actually takes you to either Drupal 8 or Drupal 9, I guess the one that was most hit. So there are a couple of ways to go to this URL, to this particular API in the latest version, which is 11, which we're looking for. Click here, click version 11, and then search for it. Or the quick hack I found, this one is 8.9, but since 10, now we'll have like 11.x. So if you change 11.x in the end of URL, it will take you to 11 version. As you can see, just a couple of differences here and here. You don't see much difference. So the help wasn't updated. And this help for API derived directly from files. So class files has the definition, and to prove that, I'll actually go defines a REST resource annotation object. So if I open Drupal core and search for it, you'll find this exact documentation. So you can see from here, these three lines were extracted and put in the documentation. So technically, we can put more stuff here, including the examples. It actually says here, for working examples, see DB log resource, which is another example of core REST resource for database logs. So when we go in Drupal 11, you can see there is only one line and hierarchy of the object. But if we'll go back to Drupal 8 and click on dblog resort, it actually had a bit more information on how to do stuff. So actually looks like plugin annotation. This particular documentation in Drupal 8.9 had a bit more information and more help. So how does a good looking help example in an API would look like to a developer? Well, let's go and now back to my tasks, whatever they are here. So I think I contributed to this file system interface.copy documentation is inaccurate. And if we'll go all the way to the bottom and click on the latest commit, you can see that this particular documentation for file system interface.php was actually changed and extended, adding the parameters, adding an example of code. So this is an example of how to contribute to code here, and how to add references and stuff like that. If you want to see how it looks in the API, we can again copy the name of the class, go to Google, file system interface. Now it took us to Drupal 10. As you can see, Drupal 10 doesn't have it, so let's try 11. So this is 10, 11. Oh, can't see the documentation. With an example, is it just copy? Maybe just a copy. Here you go. Here's our example. So it was just specific for copy. That help was updated for the copy function of this file interface. So that's why it was pulled here. So if we compare it to 10.09, as you can see, 10 had a bit of spiel here with no example. And then we opened the task and contributed code, including the example here, right here, how to use it, which makes it easier for developers to actually read for this particular copy command and also copy the example if we want to. So if we look at this particular task, again, it was open for Drupal core project, as you can see, and the component is documentation. So you can go into the issues. If you can search for the documentation issues here, see if you want to contribute to currently active one or less active one, or want to help review the documentation. And if not, you can create a new issue and from here select the component of documentation. Here, and create a new task and try to add the example. For example, we don't have a good REST reservoirs example. So we can either go to the core or to one of the modules and find a REST example here. REST resource. So that's one of the things to go and check how you can do it. You can copy it from the guide as well. I found that if we copy the stuff from the guide and API, and the guide seems very similar, that's very good thing. So it's consistent. Or, of course, you can go to our favorite generative tools. Here, I ask ChatGPT I need some help with creating an example Drupal API. It gave me some guides and said, I want an example of how to use REST resource plugin in Drupal 11. And obviously, be cautious. You need to understand what this thing produces and be able to review it. For example, here, as you can see, it did create a proper info.yaml file as an example, but probably if you know your info.yaml, you can see that the format of the dependencies is incorrect, so that needs to be fixed. Same goes here. It actually created a custom message resource file, but as you can see, it was trained on the old style notations, the one that sits inside the comment rather than the ones that I showed you before that sits outside the comment, whatever they are. Here. So REST resource. So be careful with generative tools, but again, they're good to give you an example, and you can copy paste this example to the guide or to the documentation API and contribute it as a code. Now, you can actually go and copy paste the example straight into the code, like in one of those issues. Actually, here you can create a fork in the active issue. Click edit. You can do it all in the browser because documentation, again, you don't need to run it through, just need to make sure it's properly formatted, and you don't even need to have an ID in order to contribute to the branch. Again, this is a very specific example of specific API for both guides and for the API documentation inside the code, but you can do it with pretty much any other guide as well. So if you want to contribute to documentation, and I really recommend you to do that, just go and read a couple of issues on Drupal.org, go read a couple of guide pages, something that relates to your job today. It's a good start. That's what I do. Again, the REST resource basically came from exactly that. And see what Google searches gives you, find those pages that maybe link, talk to guide maintainers, maybe request to become a guide maintainer, although there's not clear path. And I think that's it from me. So hope you enjoyed quick introduction on contributing to documentation in Drupal, and I hope we actually will have less barriers and more well-written documentation. Any questions?
There are a couple of questions in the chat, Vladimir. Ivan is asking, how would you identify documentation that needs attention?
It's when you copy. Well, I found it two guys. First of all, you copy the example and it doesn't work. Single directory components, I still think has an example that doesn't work. And I ran a few bells, but I literally never developed with single directory components to the point where I can actually spend enough time to the documentation. So what I do, how I narrow it down is I would go and check out documentation for something I'm currently working or something I'm currently teaching. So luckily I was a teacher for a couple of years, so there was plenty of material to give to the students, and I want to make sure, and it's not just the college students, it's also private companies and government organizations who want to learn Drupal. So I was like, I want to be able to pass the guide page to upcoming developers or upcoming managers of Drupal, and they should be able to follow it up and understand it. And that's kind of my guide. If I can't follow it up and understand it, then it means the documentation not worth sharing. So rather than creating a custom guide, I would rather go and improve the documentation. Again, regardless if it's development, not development, documentation works the same way.
There's another cheeky question from Carl. Is there an open issue for the fact that the Drupal homepage doesn't have an obvious link to documentation?
Oh, I didn't know that until today because I don't use the new page. I always go to my profile, so I actually use the old page. And today, when I was preparing, I click Apple F and could find the documentation menu. So it was a surprise for me that there's no documentation there. There is a learn about Drupal CMS. I'm not sure if it's confusing or not, but yeah, I think
There's
it's
a link to it in the develop drop-down menu. There's a link to all documentation,
but how does person supposed to know that when they come first time to the Drupal.org?
that develop
That's
includes documentation? I don't know. I guess that's a UX question.
because it's not just develop, it's maintainers and administrators guides. I assume somewhere else. So if person wants to learn Drupal from maintainer or administrator perspective, that's why I like
Do we
docs
have docs
mainly.
on that?
Yeah, we do have a bunch of guides on that. Plenty.
Yeah.
There's plenty of guides on administration and content editing. One of my first guide updates were on removing all the images of CK Editor 4 and putting all the images and GIFs and videos for CK Editor 5. That was fun. And that's, I think, 2 years after we replaced the CK Editor to switch to CK Editor 5, there was still plenty of CK Editor 4 images. But that's how I learned. So yeah, images, just screenshots of the standalone Drupal was how I learned how to contribute to a lot of guides. If you don't like writing or reading, you can do images.
Any more questions for Vladimir?
Yes, a question from my side. For module development, so you've got a contrib module. How deep does your documentation needs to be on that? Because you do have your README in your code,
Yep.
but documentation from the site, how far do you need to go with that?
Yeah, specifically didn't touch on modules because I think we can go for another half an hour just talking about modules. My preference is have README documentation, readme.md, copy it into if you can, because you not always have permissions, copy it to the description of your module or theme if you can. And there's also ability to add the guide for a specific module and specific. So I think if those three are consistent, if you need one page, you don't probably need a guide. If you need more than one page, a lot of big themes need more than one page on how to modify them. I think then create a guide. Otherwise, make sure that your README MD is up to date with a module. If you're a co-maintainer and cannot edit the description of the module or a page, it's a bummer. I know a couple of modules like that where I'm co-maintainer, I cannot edit the description. They still have a lot of Drupal 7 references, and I think it's gonna bite us. But it's basically, one-on-one conversation with maintainers saying, can you update the homepage? Here's readme.md. It's all there. Can you update it? So create a task. At least there would be some sort of a conversation. But it's a slow process. But if we won't do anything about it, in 5 years' time, we would still have Drupal 7 references all over the place. Jana is asking, doesn't Drupal CMS supposed to be less development, more config build? I assume so, but again, I'm not a user, never used Drupal CMS in my life. How quickly to find out what to do? Is there a guide? Is there a tutorial? I think it should be like first thing there.
Yeah. Putting docs under development hides it from site builders, designers, editors. Totally agree with that. Then Pamela, the Drupal CMS docs are not in that section. They're linked from the Drupal CMS page. Okay.
But there are tools, just to comment on putting into the code hides it. There are tools like something book to generate PDFs and generate HTML pages from static. Bootstrap does that. So all the docs are generated from, I think, using Jekyll, static site build generator, and they are in code. So all this documentation is in code. And then when they deploy the new version of the website on a Bootstrap, it gets compiled into static pages. So there are tools there. We can leverage them. They've been there for a decade. It just for some reason we can't get a modern tool like a static site generator and apply it to Drupal.org.
Okay. Thanks a lot for this, Vladimir. It was really helpful.
Thank you.
All right. Now we have Pamela from Technocrat, and she'll wants to have a discussion around the Marketplace Initiative. So Marketplace Initiative was something Dries announced recently, and over to Pamela.
Yeah, I just thought it might be interesting to chat about, I don't know, what people think about it, if they have any questions or thoughts or major objections or yeah, just other comments. There's been a lot of commentary so far. So yeah, if you don't know what we're talking about, Dries announced in the Atlanta keynote that the Drupal Association is exploring developing a marketplace for Drupal site templates, which are essentially composer create project packages that will include a custom theme, well, a theme and some additional feature sets. So via recipes, adding content types and some additional functionality, and that those would potentially be available for purchase. So not just open source, but also potentially looking at being able to buy and sell templates on that marketplace.
Has anyone actually heard about this initiative? If you have any comments, what do you feel about it? And by the way, on Drupal Slack, there is actually a channel for this. It's called Drupal CMS Marketplace. I can put a link to that here.
Would our responses impact the initiative in any way?
Well, the DA is doing a whole process to seek feedback from the community. So yes, I think so. I mean, obviously there are a lot of opinions, so I can't say how much one single opinion weighs, but
yeah, that's exactly right. That's what I thought. Well, to me, this whole marketplace is nothing new. If you look at Joomla marketplace, if you look at WordPress, there is a lot of packages, plugins, modules you can purchase outright to get some functionality. Like to me personally, I believe in open source, and it would be very sad to see this initiative going forward, but that's just my personal opinion. And I'm not sure. I think it needs some sort of plan.
Certainly we will make a
Goals.
plan. I would say also, so Yana's asked, how are we going to avoid WordPress model where modules have two versions, free and paid? Dries has said categorically modules will never be paid. So modules will not be for sale. That's not what this is about. This is about selling a theme potentially, or theme assets, or it's really about the display element of the site and how that's licensed. We still don't know. There might be certain components of the site template that are licensable and certain that are not, but 100% confirmed, we will not have paid modules. So no need to worry about what will happen there because it's not possible.
Okay, thank you. But also, if you're talking about paid themes, again, that's not quite new. You could have purchased themes for Drupal since Drupal 6, at least, from my memory.
But because of the way Drupal is built, they were pretty clunky. And so if you bought a theme, you generally needed a database dump in order to get the correct content structure to match your theme.
Yeah,
and so
that's correct.
The big difference with Experience Builder now is that you can essentially develop a theme just with SDCs that doesn't really require that same level of, plus recipes allow you to easily generate the config that you need in order for a theme to work properly. So we think that those two things combined create a landscape where it's a totally different proposition. From like, say, doing it, even doing it now is not really that easy. It's not going to be feasible until Experience Builder is ready.
Jana saying, how are we going to avoid WordPress model gap? Okay, but developers will want to get paid. If you're going to say designers will get paid. Recipes can continue.
I got a thought about this. Hello?
Yep.
So yeah, there's a resource called Theme Forest, and I already looked into this. There are thousands of sales of different themes on it, for Drupal particularly. So I think that's a good initiative, and there is a marketplace for the themes, but the main advantage of like own marketplace could be a usage of issues. So if we do this in a Drupal way, so that users of this theme could create issues, and probably funding could be spread among other developers. Probably that's a really good idea to have this share of the market.
Yeah, I think the key benefit that we see in addition to potentially drawing in new users is that it could potentially create a revenue stream for the Drupal Association, which, as Vlad noted, tools like documentation and code and even the GitLab migration, which has been going on for like 3 years now and isn't done still, the Drupal.org redesign, all of these projects that we would as a community benefit from, they're not able to complete and dedicate resources to because they have such a small team and such limited funding. So when it comes to sort of the actual payment, I think, Yada, to your question around developers wanting to get paid, I see it as a much bigger problem that companies like mine and other large companies are building really large Drupal websites using modules and not contributing anything back. My company does contribute quite a bit back, and I know many of the people here do as well. So Salsa, for example, and obviously Vlad, you guys too. But I think it's maybe a little bit of a distraction to focus on a really low end of that market by saying a designer who develops a beautiful theme and includes, say, the web form module to add a feature, that person should give some small percentage of the small amount of money that they're charging to the web form developer, when actually the people that we should be trying to get revenue from are the ones that are seeing like millions and millions of dollars come through their agency in a year. So I get that it's a visibility thing, that if we're selling something in a marketplace, you can see it, you can see the transaction, you can see the price. But we have a huge monetization problem in Drupal now. And what this would do is potentially give the Drupal Association a piece of the revenue that they're not getting right now. So they're getting nothing right now. And this would at least see them getting something, I think. So I understand that it's not ideal, but I think there's just no way to, I mean, I think we can all agree we don't want to have modules be bought and sold. And so short of that, I think my ideal scenario is there's beautiful designs. We increase the Drupal user base. The Drupal Association is properly funded and can continue to innovate and, just kind of properly support the community. Drupal itself has been innovating so much and we're able to move so quickly. Like if you look what happened with Drupal CMS, and the community comes together and companies contribute and it's all great. But then when it comes to the DA, they're just completely falling behind because their revenue is actually shrinking. And I think if anybody's like wondering more about that, the Drupal Association is a nonprofit that's most of their funding actually comes from DrupalCon in North America every year, which is, I think, kind of a shocking thing. And the rest just comes from either essentially donations, Drupal certified partner memberships, and very, very small and kind of continuously requiring, business development things. These are not just like passive income options that they have at their disposal. So I think their annual revenue is about $3 million. And when you factor in that a bunch of that has to go toward actually running the DrupalCon event, that really leaves very little for the rest of it, which is the stuff that we all care about, the infrastructure and the supporting tools. So in my mind, it would be great if for module developers, those tools actually existed and were being maintained and being developed. That's I think that's the reward that I think we can realistically expect.
Pamela,
Salsas and Technocrats are building their own themes. Yeah, we wouldn't use the marketplace ourselves. Like we wouldn't be buying themes. We probably wouldn't be selling themes either. So the idea would be to sell themes to people that currently can't build a Drupal site because they don't know how to develop a custom theme. I mean, if we get Experience Builder working perfectly, and if we smash Drupal CMS out of the park, it's still not going to be accessible to people who don't know how to write PHP or Twig. And so we need to solve that problem. Otherwise, we're not going to reach the audience that we are hoping to reach, which is the WordPress audience. Well, all we want to do is be in a position to say to the smaller end of the market, hey, you're building that website with WordPress. Would you consider using Drupal? And we can't do that right now. We just can't. We know that. So,
Will the marketplace also be coupled and decoupled as well?
do you mean like, will there be decoupled site templates?
Yes.
Sure, I guess. I don't know. I don't see why not.
Yeah, if you go to the Slack channel that I posted, there's a lot of conversation happening there. There are a lot of surveys also happening there. So it would be great if, whoever is interested goes there and actually fills out surveys and asks questions there. Carl is saying we are not the target audience. It would be amazing for independent people using a SaaS platform such as Drupal CMS. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the SaaS platform is a whole other aspect where I do think we probably need SaaS hosting options to make this viable. I am not going to take that up, but I sure hope somebody does. There actually is a company called Drupito that's in the process of launching. It's Drupito, and they are planning to develop a SaaS platform for Drupal
It's
CMS.
already in. It's already live.
The site is live, but I don't think can you actually sign up and buy it?
I think so. Because I saw this a couple of weeks back. Let me find a link for that.
I suspect there's quite a few more players to come into this space in the next couple of years.
I sure hope so. I really do. Yana asked, how much would you charge for a theme? I don't know. I think it's probably up to the developer of the theme. WordPress is super cheap. It's like $5 per month. I don't know where you're finding $5 per month hosting. Even the cheapest hosts are like roundabout sort of 12 to 15 US dollars in my experience. But there's no reason that you shouldn't be able to run Drupal on that kind of hosting. It's the same tech stack. So we don't see why you shouldn't be able to run Drupal on A2 hosting. In fact, I have a Drupal CMS site on A2 that we're using to test automatic updates and Project Browser to try to make sure that those tools will work in the cheap hosting options, because they're really the only place that it does work, because you have to have a writable file system in order to use those tools. So obviously we prefer, for our purposes, we prefer proper Drupal hosting with dev tools and things like that. But for somebody that's just trying to build a site via the UI, there's no problem with that. And it's actually a throwback to the days of Drupal 7 when that was not only feasible, but it was super common to build a site on cheap hosting. And there was even I think until Drupal 9 there was the page that let you add a module via FTP, so you could actually upload a module via zip file. I think it was, you download the zip file and then upload the zip file. So it's kind of trying to take us back to those days, but a little more properly, I guess, a little more sophisticated, better user experience.
Kyle, I think everybody here started on cPanel at one point of time. But Drupito is, if you go annual, it's $9.99 per month.
There you go.
Oh, yeah, so which is very interesting. You can have custom content types, upload files, install and configure a specific set of module themes and recipes. But it's Drupal CMS website that you'll get. All right, any other questions, any other comments around Marketplace? And as I was saying, please go to that Slack channel. There's a lot of conversation happening. And the page that I linked, and that also has, you can become a volunteer if you want to for this Marketplace initiative. All right, thanks a lot, Pamela. Is there anything that we want to discuss today? Anything else we want to discuss?
Just a heads up that DrupalCon Asia is still looking for volunteers and will soon be looking for speakers. So now is the time to plan that if you're interested.
I've already applied for being a volunteer, so. All righty. Thanks everyone for joining, and see you next month. Bye.
Thanks, Suchi.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.